this video, we'll just go over some of the basics if you're just getting started with Adobe Illustrator. Once you start Adobe Illustrator, you'll get a screen similar to this one. You'll want to click on the New File button. Then you'll see a panel where you can choose the size of the page you'd like to work on, and you can adjust it manually. You can choose your unit of measure. You can also choose your color mode. If you're doing something for digital, you want RGB. Otherwise, choose CMYK for print. I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Once in Illustrator, this is our workspace. On the left, you can see our toolbar, and I'm really just going to go over a few of the basic tools. On the right, there is a Properties panel, which will then let us adjust those things. And then in the middle here is our artboard. Okay, let's start with some shapes. So let's say I'd like to make a rectangle or another shape. This tool here, if I click and hold it, I can choose the type of shape I'd like to make. Let's just go ahead and start with a basic rectangle. To make that rectangle, I can click, hold, and drag and let go to make a rectangle. Or I could click, let go, and I could actually type in specific dimensions if I'd like that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel. I don't need that. Once our rectangle or shape is made, we want to go over to one of these selection tools. I'm going to go to the top one, which is the regular selection tool. And then I can move this rectangle, and I can also make adjustments to it. Over on the right, here I'm going to move this here so we can see them together easily. There is our Properties panel, and here I can change things like the fill and stroke. The fill is the fill of the shape. So if I click on it, I can choose a color. I can either choose from these swatches or I can pick from a spectrum. So let's just change it to like a magenta. And I can also change the stroke. So the color here is showing up as black, but I can click on it and change it to another color. I'm just going to pick a contrasting color just to make it easier to see. So I'm going to pick, let's say, green. I can change the size of the stroke here. I can make it thicker. And that really can be done for any of the shapes. Notice that also is adjusting things over on the toolbar. We have our fill and our stroke. So let's say I click off of this and I want to make my next shape a different color. I could click on it and I double click and I can pick, let's say I want it to be blue. And let's say I want the stroke to be, let's make it black. Then let's pick a different shape. I'll go to ellipse. So then same thing, click, drag, and let go will make my shape. If I want to change this in any way, once I'm done with the shape, I want to go to one of my selection tools right away. Otherwise, if I go to click to move it, notice I'm just making another shape, right? I don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to go to my selection tool, this black arrow, and then I can click and select these different shapes. And I can move them around. Notice they are individual, and I can also easily delete them simply by selecting them and using the delete key on my keyboard. Let's get rid of this and this. I can then change my fill and stroke or appearance or anything I'd like to do over here. I can do some basic things like change the width and height. But then there's also this arrow. The white one is the direct selection that will let me change the anchor points of this shape. Now notice each shape has little anchor points on it. The rectangle just has ones on the corners. The circle one has them on the edges. But if I click on it, notice the circle one also has these little handles. So I can grab each individual anchor point with this direct selection tool and adjust it. And these handles are little seesaws, which I can change the curve here. So if I wanted to make this more, I don't know, egg-shaped, or if I wanted to draw a face or something, I can just alter my shape. Now to change the order of things, let's say I've got my rectangle and my blob here. Notice if I would like my rectangle to be in front, I can simply right-click and go to Arrange, and I can bring forward or bring to front, for instance, and it will arrange it that way. There are other shapes we can do. For instance, the polygon tool is more of multiple sides. And then we also have the star tool, which would, make a star. Once again, once it's created, if I want to alter it, I'm going to go over to my selection tool and then go to properties, and I can change the fill and stroke. And if let's say I don't want a stroke, I can choose this one with the red line through it, and that actually says no stroke. And same thing with no fill. Let's say I don't want this to be filled, I only want it to be a green outline. I can go to fill, I can choose the white with the red stroke, and it is now empty. Now you can't really tell because of the white background, but if I move it, notice there is no fill now. And if I want that to be in the front, I would right click, arrange, bring to front. Okay, if you want to make shapes, you can often start with a regular shape and then just alter it with the direct selection tool. So let's say I start with this rectangle and draw that. Then once again, I want to move to one of these selection tools. Let's go to the direct selection tool. If I click and drag, I can grab this individual point and I can adjust it and make it whatever I'd like it to be. But if I want to start from scratch, I can use something called the pen tool. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these things. So probably the easiest way to do that is use the selection tool and either click and hit delete, or I can drag a box around the whole thing and hit delete. So I'm going to create an image with my pen tool, and which is this third one down. The one below it is the curvature tool, which is kind of just another way of making curved lines. But we're going to go with the classic pen tool. Now, I'd say the easiest way to work with the pen tool is to remove the fill and only work with a line. I just want to show you, like, for instance, otherwise, if I'm creating things, notice it's like filling in as I go, and it gets a little strange. So let me delete this. So what I'm going to do is click on my fill and change it to none. And let's make a color that I can see easily. I'm going to click on the line, and let's just pick something like black. With the pen tool, it does a couple of things. We can make straight lines and curved lines. So to make straight lines, all you need to do is click, and notice I let go of my mouse, but a blue line is following me around. This first point is where my line is going to start. Then I choose where my line wants to go, and then I click again. So I didn't click and drag, I didn't just draw all over the place to make a shape. I actually clicked this first point, and then I clicked the second point. And now it thinks I might want to click another place. So notice this blue line is kind of giving me a preview where this next line would look. So if I wanted to make, a kind of a zigzaggy line, I could click and click, 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 right? And if I wanted to be an image that I fill, this looks like a sideways lightning bolt. That'll work. If I would like it to connect, when I roll over that last point, notice it looks like a little circle. So when I see that, I can click and it will complete that shape. Just like when I'm working with the other shapes, if I want to do something with this, I'll want to go to one of my selection tools. So let's go to the regular selection tool. And if I'd like, I can rotate this. And an easy way to do that is just roll over by one of the corners, and notice it changes to a little rotate icon. And I can do that. And I can actually change the size of it. Let's move this down here. Oh, that's kind of a weird looking lightning bolt. Let's say I want to adjust this. I can go to the direct selection tool, and I should be able to grab this point. If it's not letting me grab it and it's grabbing the whole shape still, just click off of it and then go back onto it, and it should let you grab it. Or you can easily just drag a box around the point you would like to select. Okay, so that is a straight line shape. Let's say I'd like to make something more curvy. Once again, if I go to the pen tool, and if I'd like to make a curved line, what I do is I can either just start with a regular click, that's fine, but then my next point, I want to click, hold, and drag, and notice it gives me these handles that stick out. Okay, so it shows me the blue line, The arc part shows me where the curve's going to be, and this other straight line is really just handles showing how the curve is going. I've got like some control, and I can let go. So there is my curve, and if I'd like it to then go up, I can click and drag, and then I can click and drag, and notice it's following that. And what I'd suggest is get a rough shape in, and then you can always adjust it. Okay. What I don't want to do for a curve is like a bunch of little, clicks along. I've seen people do that, trying to make a shape. But you have all these little anchor points. It just becomes a mess. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Let's say I want to undo and like, oh, this is terrible. I can either ignore it and delete the points later, or I believe I can just hit escape, and then I'm going to click backspace. And if I do it too many times, it removes the thing. So I'm going to hit Control Z. Now let's say I'd like to continue on. I should be able to just click on that last anchor and then continue on and drag the rest of my shape. It's just like a weird, who knows what that is. And if I want to get rid of points, I can simply use my pen tool and roll over different anchor points and click on them. Notice it has this little subtraction on different anchors that I don't want, right? And or I can add points if I'd like an anchor point. There is also a tool that is a conversion tool, anchor point tool here, where if I would like a point to be curved and it's pointy, I can click and drag and it can become a curve, or I can simply click on it and it can become a point. So that really just converts, or I can grab edges and it looks like some weird little creature. So this is, I didn't really have anything in mind while I was drawing, so it kind of looks like that too. Let's get rid of it, and how about I draw something on purpose? Let's get rid of that too. Okay, so how about I make, right now it's approaching Halloween pretty soon. I'm going to make a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. So I'm going to use my pen tool. And first I'm going to create the pumpkin body. So what I'm going to do is just click to start. And then I'm just picturing a pumpkin. So I want it to be curved, but once again, doesn't need to be perfect. I can go in and edit it after. I'm going to click and drag. And then I'm click, drag. Notice it's lumpy. I'll fix that. All right, I'm going to go here. Well, it's actually way lumpier than I was thinking. But once again, I'll be able to fix it. Click and drag. All right, so I'm just clicking the next spot and dragging out a shape, and I can fix it up when I go back around. I'm going to click to close that up. And then I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, and I can go in and I can grab these anchor points and adjust these little seesaws to make it much more curved. What you don't want to do is have these really long seesaws. Notice it pulls the curve out. If it gets a little out of control, just make them a little shorter. And here is another point. And so I can just go through and smooth it out to kind of what I'd rather have. Okay, that's probably okay. All right. And then since this is a pumpkin, I think I'd like to have it be orange. So I can change the fill to more of an orange color. Now I probably want a stem, so I'll go with my pen tool, and I'm just going to start up here, and I'm going to click, the top's going to be kind of straight, and then let's say I want that stem to curve, and I can go over here, and I'm not going to worry about what's down here because that'll go behind. Notice I didn't get rid of the fill, so it's a little awkward while I'm drawing. It's filling in, not quite what I want. So if that's bothersome, just make sure to get rid of the fill while you're drawing. And I'm going to click here and drag because I want it to be a little curved. I'm going to go over to my selection tool, and I want this to be filled with green. So I'm going to change that to kind of a dark green. And if I don't want this part of the stem to be showing, all I need to do is right click, go to arrange, and send to back. So now it is behind the pumpkin and it kind of fits a little better. And if I wanted to hide a little more, I can either grab this and I can grab a couple points at the same time by dragging, so I can make this shorter, or I can simply do the full selection tool and just move it around. All right, so how about I make a couple of eyes and a mouth? So same thing, pen tool. I'm going to make just triangle eyes, and since it's triangle, I'm just going to go click, 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 click. And I don't want it to be green. Let's say I want it to be yellow, like if there's a candle inside. So I'm going to change the fill to this bright yellow. And I don't quite like the angle, so I could also rotate it a little bit. Maybe I do kind of like it. And if I don't want to make another one and I just want to duplicate it, I can do that also. So I can simply go copy and then paste, or I can do the Control C, Control V, just like any other program, copy and paste. And I have identical eyes now. And if I'd like a smiling mouth, I can draw in another shape. So for this, I'm going to make this no fill. And there is a little shortcut underneath over here on the tool palette. There's a shortcut I can click on the no fill. And I'm going to go ahead to my pen tool and draw. I'm just going to click this one. On the top one, I'm going to have a single tooth. And down here, I think I'll give it a couple of teeth, right? And each point I am just clicking, and then I want to fill that. Let's make that yellow also. So let's say I've forgot what color this was. If I'd like it to have the same fill and stroke as something else, I can use this eyedropper tool while it's selected and select it. And what it does is it does the same settings as the one I'm selecting from. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so here's my jack-o'-lantern. And let's say I'd like to move it over here. Now, a couple ways I can do it. I can move each piece individually. That's kind of rough. Or I could click and drag a box around the whole thing and they're all selected. But I can also do that, click and drag a box around. And then if I right click and then choose group, now this is a whole group. So I can click and move it around together and that just is easier to work with. Now, if you happen to be using Photoshop and you're going, hey, what about layers? There is a layers palette over here on the right. And if you notice, I didn't have to have all kinds of different layers. It already made these for me, and I can expand it to these different things. It's got my group, and each individual thing is there if I'd like to have it that way. Or I could make a new layer if I'd like to keep things separate. But I don't need to. Illustrator generally keeps things separate for me. All right, the other thing is, once it's a group, I can still edit them individually by using the direct selection tool, and I can still move these individual pieces around, but then with the regular selection tool, it grabs the whole thing. And I can also use text. So over here, there is a text tool, and I'm just going to show the regular type tool. And if I have this and I click, it will give me a kind of a placeholder text, and I can type what I'd like. I'm going to say hello. And I probably like it larger. So I can adjust the font size and things here, or I can just grab it with the selection tool and drag it much larger. And notice it changes the type size. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. And here I can choose my font. So I can choose, and it's kind of nice, you can see previews. And so I'm just going to go and pick more of a chunky font. How about this one? Kind of silly. And so I have my font, and same thing here. I can choose my fill. I can choose a stroke. So let's say I want it to be, I don't know why, green outline, and make it large. But a cool thing with Illustrator also, besides being able to just squish these things around however I'd like, is that I can actually edit the text itself. So once I'm here, let's say I wanted these two L's to be taller. I don't know why, but let's say I did. I can go to the menu on top, type, create outlines, and it now is really more of a shape than font. So you want to be careful when you do this. So you can't just edit it normally. But then notice each of these are separate. So I can move with the direct selection tool, I can move these letters around and kind of have a little fun with it. So actually, I kind of like that. And if I want, I can elongate things. So I can, let me zoom in here. If I wanted to make, let's say, this L really large, or, I can grab the direct selection tool and it lets me grab the points just like any other shape. So, I can adjust things if I want to. Okay, and if I want to save an Adobe Illustrator file, I need to just go File, Save As. It'll try and get you to save it onto the Creative Cloud. I'm just going to save this on my computer. And you'll want to save this as an Adobe Illustrator file so that it keeps it in a way that you can edit it again. So you can just go ahead and name it. And it will have an AI extension and hit Save. And then you can go back in and edit. This is just talking about backward compatibility, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. So that is a quick overview on using some of the basic tools in Illustrator, and there's so much more to it, but that's really just a way to get started.